Hi there. I am Lisa Scarborough, and I'm an Ayurveda practitioner here at the Holistic Highway. And I would like to welcome you to our Women's Health and Hormones series. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking about some important topics that might help you maneuver these changes in life during perimenopause, menopause. So let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen with you. And we'll take a look at this first week, which is understanding your body's changing rhythm. What is actually going on in the body as the hormones begin to fluctuate and change throughout our life? So a couple of weeks ago, we did a bit of an introductory, and so a lot of you are back for the 4 week series, and so I welcome you back. And so you might remember from our master class that we did talk a little bit about what's happening. We sort of brushed the surface of what is going on, what the hormones are doing at this midlife stage around 40 years old. And now we'll start to apply some deeper information and understand how this is happening for you in your body. Because as we know through the teachings of Ayurveda, that it is not one size fits all. So women will experience perimenopause, menopause in different ways. So let's go a little deeper and see how some of these things might be showing up in your body. This approach is a bit different than we might be used to. It's really not about fixing symptoms because you're not broken. This is not a flaw in your body. This is a natural rite of passage, right? And so it's not about fixing anything. It's not about following rigid rules and strict programs. It's not about doing more. In fact, it is likely going to be about doing less, depending on your lifestyle. But mostly it's about tuning into your body. What is happening? How is your body speaking to you? And how can you learn to understand the language of your body so that you know what you need and when you need it? So how will that change anything? Awareness is the beginning of everything, right? So without the awareness, the attention to the body, to these signals and signs, we won't know how to manage. So many women might try to push through that fatigue or restrict their calories or remove food groups entirely out of the diet, or maybe work out harder. And those things might have worked at a time in life, but you'll start to find that those things aren't working anymore. And you're wondering what is going on. Over time, if these signals are ignored, the body will just start to speak a little louder. The symptoms will become more intense. And so the symptoms are really the second language of the body. The first language is the patterns that start showing up. We start to recognize patterns. So the missing piece here is, although we've talked about hormones, blood sugar, stress, detoxification, these are some of the things that we covered in our masterclass. And we'll dive deeper into all of those things over these next 4 weeks because they're all very important in managing through this change in life. But where we'll go deeper is to understand how are these things showing up in you, in your body. A little bit different for each woman. So you might remember our chart here from our masterclass, and we sort of went over this timeline of approximately the age that things begin to shift and what exactly is happening at that time. And so our focus in this series will be these stages here from about 40 years old on. And again, it'll be different for every woman, depending really on your lifestyle to some degree, how soon in life you might start to experience these changes and how intensely you might experience these changes. So right around 40 years old, give or take, This is when the progesterone begins to decline. We start to have a decline in the progesterone. The hormones start to fluctuate a little bit. By now, we have lived uh, a life of very outward focus, right? So in our 20s and our 30s, we're in that fiery stage of life, or pitta, as it would be known in Ayurveda. And the pitta phase in life is exactly that. It's that outward energy. It's that focus on gaining knowledge, going to college, maybe having a relationship, getting married, buying a home, creating a career. These are the focuses in life. And it's a busy time. And depending on how intensely you live in that time, you can experience, again, some symptoms around age 40 that might start to just signal that, okay, this lifestyle or this intense way of living may not be working anymore. So some changes, some shifts need to take place. And the sooner we recognize that and understand that, the less severe the symptoms may be for you. So as the progesterone begins to decline, the systemic focus is the nervous system mainly. And there are a lot of other hormones, but I'm really just going to focus on these few hormones that we're all very familiar with. So the nervous system becomes a little bit more sensitive around this time of life. And this is the sort of the ability to adapt and to recalibrate when we have a lot of outside stimulus. So this, in from the Ayurvedic view, is going to be the season of Vata, Vata being the wind and space elements of nature. These elements begin to increase at this stage of life. And so depending on your unique constitution, the amount of wind and space element that you embody, if there's more of that already, you'll start to feel these symptoms even a little deeper. On the other hand, people who have more of that earth and water element in their constitution, their predominance is earth and water, maybe these symptoms are a little less noticeable. So again, this is where it becomes very personal, where we start to really look inward and say, okay, what am I actually feeling? And so then from there, around 50 years old, by then the estrogen has begun to drop as well. So both progesterone and estrogen are dropping, estrogen being the reproductive hormones. And these hormones are predominantly responsible for building tissue and maintaining the tissue. And so this is when we might start to see a little bit of the crepey skin, maybe the loss of elasticity a little bit in the skin. Maybe we start to see sort of the biceps dangle a little bit more. And so things start to shift. We start to really feel a physical change in the body. And so this is really, according to Ayurveda, when that Vata stage really begins, right around 50 years old. Vata starts to build to the degree that it will be more and more predominant as we age. This is the third and last stage that Ayurveda recognizes in life. And so from here on, it's really a lot of Vata management, regardless of your nature. Vata is sort of the first dosha that we want to look at. And it is the one that needs the most TLC. It's the one that is the most unstable and more likely to go out of balance. And so we start feeling more Vata-like symptoms at this time. And then beyond that, beyond 60, we really get into the wise woman years where we start to really integrate all of the information and all of the experiences that we've had. And we begin to sort of clear out all the things that just aren't serving us anymore. And we start to sort of distill all of this information into a very clear understanding of who we are and what works for us and what doesn't work for us, right? So let's take a little bit of a closer look at these hormones. When progesterone begins to decline, we start to feel this sort of loss of grounding or this sense of ungroundedness. And so many women start to feel a little more anxious around this time, maybe something that they hadn't dealt with before. But all of a sudden, there's some anxiety there. This is the aggravation of the nervous system, right? So this is the nervous system governed by these elements of wind and space, vata. So the nervous system starts to become a little more sensitive, and we might experience difficulty with sleep, or again, more anxiety that might not have been there before. And then the estrogen begins to decline, and we have a depletion of ojas. Ojas is a Sanskrit word for the essence of you, right? The perfect expression of everything that we've taken in and digested, and it has become who we are. This is ojas, and we'll talk a little bit more about ojas in the next slide. But we'll also start to experience maybe the depletion of the blood and plasma tissues of the body, or in Sanskrit would be called rasa and rakta. In Western medicine, this is just called blood. In Eastern medicine, the blood is split into plasma and red blood cells. Each are fed separately and differently. There are 7 systems or 7 tissues in the body that need nourishment and feeding. So rasa, or plasma, being the first one in line, is distributed throughout the entire body. The 7 tissues are fed from the top down. So if rasa is not strong and healthy, nothing else will be strong, healthy, well-formed. So starting with rasa and then right into rakta, plasma, red blood cells, we work on the blood. The liver being a very important organ in this process. And again, throughout the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking more about the liver and how the liver will filter the hormones as they are used, and sort of recirculate them through the body if they're not cleared out. So we'll talk in our 4th week about the practices of how we clear some of these things out of the body. And then we also might experience some increasing dryness and more instability. Again, this is vata, right? So maybe the joints feel a little less stable. Maybe you have that knee that gives out on you every now and then, or the hip that goes out, or things like this. We start to notice these things happening around this time. These are the little clues, the little red flags to say, uh-oh, vata's getting a little high. And then we start to experience the cortisol dysregulation. This is, again, related to the nervous system. The cortisol might be higher than it should be or needs to be. This is when both vata, space and wind, and pitta, that's the fire element, that's when both of these start to become more unstable. The 2 of these elements together, think about wind and fire, these 2 together can be pretty destructive if they're not kept, if they're not contained, right? So we'll also maybe experience some dysregulated digestion, or agni, as it would be called in Sanskrit, as well as the nervous system. So the key point is that hormones are not the root of the problem. They're just the messengers letting you know, hey, I've gotten a signal from the body saying things are intensifying. And so the hormones start to fluctuate in an attempt to level things out again. So Ayurveda works at a deeper level than just the hormones. Ayurveda gets down to the level of the body and the messages that are being created, the messages that the body is giving to the hormones. So at this stage of life, very often the message is one of alarm. We're under attack, we're not safe, and the nervous system begins to react to that. And that's where the hormones become unbalanced. So we're going to work a little deeper on the message to the hormones to let the nervous system know that we are safe, we are well. Right? So that is sort of the key to all of it. So you might remember a few slides back, the word ojas. Again, ojas is this pure essence of all that we have taken in and digested, which is why it's so very important that we're careful about what we do take in, not only through food. Food is very important, of course, in forming the tissues, But also, what are we taking in? What are we hearing? What are we seeing? What are we listening to? What are we watching? Who are we spending our time with? How are we spending our time? These things all need to be digested. And the sort of distillation of all of that is ojas. And so strong ojas is really what I like to call the pilot light. Ojas is our pilot light. It's the part of you that gives you that glow or that sense of feeling grounded and solid and resilient through all seasons of life. No matter what's happening, you have this resilience. You have this sense of all is well. I can handle this, right? This is ojas. And this is really the holy grail of Ayurveda, is to purify this ojas and to really protect ojas. It's quite precious and very limited in the body. And so we really want to start to create a life that protects this ojas. And this is around the time, 40 years old ish, where we really need to start to bring a little more focus into that sort of inner well-being, right? Whereas up until now, there's been a lot of outward focus. Now we have to start to just think about, how is all of this outward focus affecting my ojas? Is it preserving it or is it draining it? Really important question. So let's look at some of the patterns that begin to show up in life. Are you a person who might feel wired but tired, right? So you're ready to go to bed, but your mind just does not want to stop. It's just talking away and thinking about this and thinking about that. And you're lying in bed, tossing and turning and not able to fall asleep. Really just wired, but just exhausted at the same time. This is an example of Vata and Pitta, both of these dosha, the wind and air, or the wind and space, and fire elements together, which are quite destructive. As you know, wind and fire are not a good combination. These two together can cause this sort of wired but tired feel. Sometimes you feel exhausted, but you can't sleep, just so tired, and you might just pass out, but then wake up. Usually around 2 or 3 in the morning, when the wind element is more dominant, just waking up in the middle of the night, not able to sleep. This is predominantly Vata. This is predominantly the wind, but eventually Pitta becomes part of it. It pulls Pitta in, and now both are activated or accumulated. You might find some days the digestion is, maybe there's bloating. Maybe you're feeling very bloated in the belly. This is definitely the wind element. This is Vata. Or this sense of feeling perfectly calm and then moving from calm to overwhelm in a split second. All of a sudden, complete overwhelm. Again, this is Vata and Pitta working together. You'll notice here in this list that there's no Kapha, right? So you might say, by default, that the increase of these elements is decreasing Kapha. Kapha is the earth, the water. Kapha is the one that helps us feel grounded. It's the one that gives us stability and immunity and strength. And so Kapha begins to deplete as these Vata Pitta elements are increasing, right? So we've got to stop in midlife and balance that back out again, or we cross the finish line feeling pretty depleted by the time we get to that 50, that menopausal stage. So in the late 30s, 40 age group, this is when you can really start to make some small, subtle shifts and changes that might determine how you move through menopause later in life. If you've already gone through menopause and you're beyond the menopause and into the wisdom years, there's still plenty you can do. So don't worry. We'll talk about some of those things as well. But these are the patterns that are telling the story for you. So take a minute to think about, which of these do you identify with? Do you feel any of these? And you may feel all of them at different times on different days. But notice, is there one that stands out as your pattern, so to speak? So as we move into this Vata stage of life, this later stage of life, It's not just the hormones, right? It's your overall ability to tolerate all of your experience, it's your resilience, your ability to recover. So you might notice that there's less buffer for your stress so that you're a little more sensitive to too much light or too much sound or too much talking or too much activity. You might become more sensitive to that. You might become more sensitive to food or sleep or just the environment in general. And you might feel depleted faster than maybe you used to. Right? And so you might not recover as quickly. And so this tendency in our culture to be just so busy all the time, we start to need a little bit more space between each activity. We can't really book our schedules one thing after the other after the other. It looks wonderful on paper, and Pitta, the fire element, will enjoy that very nicely laid out calendar. But if there's no buffer between events, between activities, a minute to catch your breath, you might become more and more sensitive to that and feel this sense of depletion or this sense of not being able to keep up with it all, right? This is the nervous system asking for a different way. It's asking for you to make a shift right now to avoid deeper imbalances down the road. So very important to listen to that inside voice at this time. So you'll start to notice that what used to work might not be working anymore. So maybe before you could skip meals and that was okay and you felt fine and it was all right. And now skipping a meal, you're really feeling it. Or maybe you used to be able to just push through your long days and just pull up your bootstraps and get it done. Maybe high intensity exercise was the answer. I feel tired, I'm going to work out harder, right? And sometimes that might work. But over time, it doesn't work anymore. Late nights, staying up beyond 10 o'clock is really challenging to the body and the nervous system, and especially around this time, around this perimenopausal time, these late nights will begin to catch up with you and start to deplete you. This isn't that you're failing or that your body's failing in some way. It's that your operating system has changed. Things are different. And so again, acknowledging the changes, acknowledging the difference and recognizing them is going to be the key. So when we look at midlife through the Ayurvedic lens, Ayurveda is going to ask, where is your energy leaking? You might want to take a minute to just get out your journal, take a pen, and just think about, where is the energy leaking? Where are you spending a lot of energy? And is that thing that you're spending the energy on worth it, right? Where is your system overloaded? Where are you taking on too much? And where is your body feeling depleted? Where are you needing some nourishment? So before adding anything in, we need to see clearly what's going on. And then we can start to make the shifts and the changes and add in what we need, but also maybe even more importantly, to take out what we don't need anymore, the things that are no longer serving us. The cost of not listening to these signals from the body are that they become chronic. You might start to experience a little bit of tired, maybe a little bit dragging here and there. If we don't pay attention to this, over time, it becomes chronic fatigue, constant exhaustion. The hormonal disruption becomes deeper. The ups are higher and the lows are lower, and it's much more unregulated. We might begin to experience weight loss, unexplained weight loss, or weight gain, even though nothing's changed in the way that you're eating. All of a sudden, the weight has shifted. And then we start to experience this sensation of burnout, absolutely just burnt out, right? Just can't take much more. Again, it's not that your body is failing. It's just that you've been out of sync for too long. And now the body's starting to speak a little louder because you didn't hear it before. So the symptoms become a little deeper and maybe a little bit more lasting, longer lasting. Many women get stuck in this cycle of trying something new. You heard about a supplement. saw it come up on social media. A friend tried a diet and lost 25 pounds. We try these different things. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. Eventually, we fall back into an old pattern. And that is because, again, it's a very individual thing. So it might have worked for your friend, but does that mean it's going to work for you? Not necessarily. You might get lucky and, throw a dart in the dark and hit on something that maybe did resound with your constitution. But it's much easier to choose what's going to work for you when you understand yourself and your constitution on a deeper level. So it isn't that you're lacking discipline with some of these things that you have tried. It's that they lack the personalization that you need. That may not be what your body's asking for, right? And this is why these things often fail. So what we're going to do differently here over these next couple of weeks together is that we're going to slow things down a little bit, take a step back, and really look clearly at what's going on in your body, in your own space, and not how it's happening for other women around you. You're not wrong in anything that you're experiencing. You will experience things differently than another woman will. So first we'll build that awareness, and then we'll start to work with your body, not against it. And that's why this will work, because we're working with your body, hearing what your body's asking for, and giving that to your body. So for this first week, it's not about changing everything that you're doing. It's just about observing without judgment, without trying to fix it, and without putting more pressure on yourself. You're just going to look at things. And so I'm going to ask you for this first week to take a little bit of time and answer a few questions on a daily basis that I will provide for you. We'll send a little handout and just go through it asking yourself, how am I feeling and how are things showing up for me? Because before we can make any change, we've got to have the clarity. So your daily check-in questions, every day, stop and say, how is my energy? How am I feeling today? You really tap into the energy. Many times we get on the hamster wheel, so to speak, and we just wake up and jump right back into it, do it again every day, right? Without really stopping to say, where's my energy today? Maybe yesterday I had the energy for this. Maybe today I need to take it a little easier, right? So check in with the energy every day. How do you feel? And then also notice your meals. Each time you eat a meal, how does it feel in your body? Take 10 minutes to stop after the meal and say, how is that sitting? Does that feel like it's just sitting there and it's not moving and it's just heavy? Does it feel like I could eat again? I'm hungry an hour later. Does it feel like gas and bloating or just an uncomfortable sensation? How is the food sitting in the body? Start to notice your mood throughout the day. Is it stable? Or are you moody, up and down, feeling fantastic and all of a sudden crashed? Notice, is there a change and a shift in your mood? And then also notice, when in the day do you feel most like yourself? That feeling of, oh yeah, that's me, right? So do you feel like yourself throughout the day? So notice, when do you feel that way? So keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Keep it simple, but be honest with yourself, right? This is only for you. No one's going to grade it or judge it. So be honest. And again, I'll send you a little handout, a PDF that you can follow each day and answer the questions for yourself. So start to notice the patterns over the next few days. Again, the dips of energy, the emotional triggers, right? Which things caused a reaction in you? And is this different? Things that you might have tolerated before all of a sudden evoke some type of a reaction. Notice those emotional triggers. Again, the digestive shifts, because it all begins with digestion. Everything starts here in the belly and it all grows from there. And notice the sleep patterns. Is there a change in the way you're sleeping versus years prior? Or even day to day or night to night, as it were? Is there a shift in your sleep? So you're gathering your data, your unique data, the data that is unique to you. So you're starting to get this information together. What you may start to realize is, wow, I am much more depleted than I thought I was. Right? You might start to feel a little compassion for yourself. Maybe you notice that your body's asking for something different. Maybe you start to notice, like, oh, yeah, there are some red flags here that I was ignoring. Or maybe you've been pushing too hard for too long, and now the body is asking for something different. So, being aware of these things is not a failure. It's just the beginning of healing. It's healing and shifting, right? That midlife shift of changing things a little bit. So once you see these patterns, then we ask, well, what do I do with it? Okay, I understand all this. I have these patterns. What do I do? Because, fatigue, not all fatigue is the same. Are you tired in your body, physically tired? Or is your mind exhausted from thinking about it all and trying to figure it all out? Or maybe there's a spiritual exhaustion or an exhaustion of the heart. I'm tired of, the emotion. Not all hormonal imbalances are the same. This is where it becomes more personal to you. So just a little glimpse of what's ahead in the next coming weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about stabilizing energy and blood sugar, which are really hand in hand, right? The blood sugar needs to be stable in order for the energy to be stable. And so we'll take a look at some of the things that cause instability in the blood sugar and energy. And we'll offer some insight into that. In the third week, we'll talk about the nervous system and nervous system regulation, right? Of understanding your stress response. How do you respond to stress? People respond differently. Some people shut down. Other people get into go mode. So we'll kind of dig in deeper and become aware of your personal stress response. And in the fourth and last week together, we'll talk about digestion, because again, that's where it all begins. We'll make sure that digestion's balanced. And then also detoxification of the pathways of the body. How does the body rid itself of what's not needed? These pathways become clogged and blocked, the channels of the body, and the body's not able to get rid of things. And this also causes quite a lot of imbalance. And again, based on you and your unique patterns. All of this is based on your unique information. So the reflection that I'll leave you with is to just take a moment and ask, what has my body been trying to tell me that I have not been listening to? So our first week together is all about awareness. We'll just start to gently cultivate some awareness. So the more clearly that you see your patterns, the easier it will become to change them. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. And I hope you have a really wonderful week, and I hope you get some clarity and insight. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week when we talk about blood sugar and energy balance. Good night.